All right, welcome back to Adobe Lightroom Classic, and today we're going to take a look at the rest of the selective adjustments inside of the program. So let's slide on over to Photoshop. All right, just to review, we are up here in the Develop module, and right here is our selective adjustments. So we're going to go ahead and select those selective adjustments. In the last video, we took a look at Select Subject, Select Sky, Select Background, and the brush. So what we're going to take a look at first is this image right here. So we can do Select Objects. Select Objects is a little bit different inside of Lightroom than it is inside of Photoshop. So inside of Photoshop, it's able to use AI and detect objects, and it makes a selection. Here, we need to tell it what to select. We can come over here, we can click on Select Objects, and this is really simple. We can control our brush size, and basically I can come over and paint over top of an object, and you're just saying, hey, here's the object, and it will find it, and just like that, it selects it. And if I need to add one, I can come up here to where it says add. I can click add. We're going to do objects, and we can do the same thing. I can just hover over it, make that selection, and it should select that subject. We can come over here and adjust those images just like that. And that's how you use select objects inside of Adobe Photoshop. Works really well. So let's take a look at a new image. And so we'll come back to this landscape that I had. And what we're going to take a look at is what we call linear gradient. And so we have gradients inside of Photoshop as well, but we're going to click on this. And what this is going to give us is a little kind of gradient option. And so I'm going to click here because basically what I want to do is create a gradient. And so I want to darken the sky, but usually when you're a landscape photographer, you're darkening this area more than this area. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't darken the whole image exactly the same, but we're going to do it with a gradient. So we're just going to pull down here. Now, if you remember when we're using mask, we've got the overlay on. And so the area in red is the area that is masked. And we can slide this to control how much. So do we want more of the foreground in mountains, or do we just want the sky and let it fade out? So I'm trying to set that little line right on the top of that mountain. So we're darkening this more, and then it's going to fade here. And what that does is make it so it looks more realistic and doesn't look fake like you did it. A lot of what used to happen back in the old days is we would make a selection and an adjustment, and it would get what we call halo around it. And you would be able to tell that you darken the area around, in this case, the mountains, because it would have this weird halo looking thing. So we're trying to avoid things like that. I can basically come in here and I can darken that area. And you can see we use that gradient to blend the darkening all the way right into the mountains and in the foreground, and it looks perfect. So that is how you use the linear gradient. One last thing, under linear gradients, if you come over here, notice there is an invert button. So if you wanted to select the opposite, so see how it's white on the, I can hit invert and it will flip flop that. And so now it's doing that. So the next image is we will click on this guy right here, and we're going to go down here to Radial Gradient, and we're just going to go ahead and do this. Now look, you could simply do this with the brush. It basically does the exact same things. I don't actually use the Radial Gradient, but I know lots of people love it. And so we have two circles. And so this inner circle that we see is getting 100% of the adjustment, meaning whatever we do over here, it's going to be 100%. And from here to here is that feather or that fade. It's going to make the adjustment 100% here and fade it out to 0. And so that's what we're looking at in this location. And you can see right here, we have the radial gradient, and below that we have a feather. So we can change our feather. So if we want to change that feather, I can go way out here and you can see that it's a really soft feather. If we want a harder feather, we can come in here and go to the left, and that's giving us a harder feather. Essentially, what you don't want is a hard edge. So when we make an adjustment, we don't want to see where it stops and ends. So we're controlling that feather so we don't get that. In this, we could also do a linear gradient. So I could come up here to linear gradient, and I could just simply draw. We're going to rotate that just like that because I started in the wrong spot. And I can darken this area. So if I wanted to darken this area in, have this area brighter, this area darker, just like that using the linear gradient. It blends in exceptionally nice, looks good in this image. So that is how you use the linear and the radial gradients inside of Photoshop. And look, you don't have to use any of these options. Try them out, see if you like them. If you like one over the other, use that. So we're going to go back here to our little lemons that we had, and we're going to go ahead and reset this. All right, so I've deleted those masks, and what we're going to take a look at this time is the range option. So the range option is right here, and inside that we have a couple of different things. So we have color range, luminance range, and depth range. Now you're only going to get depth range if you actually create a depth mask, and you need to do that beforehand when you're in the global adjustments. But so for right now, we're just going to take a look at these two. And so here I'm just going to come in and just pick that lemon. And that is simply going to isolate and pick that color. We can control that selection. So do we want it less of an area? We can slide to the left. If we want more of that color, we can slide to the right. And so basically you're just going to slide this until you get the selection that you want. And then you can come in here and adjust those colors based on a color selection. You could actually add multiple colors. So if you wanted to add and then pick a new color, you could do that as well. That's how you use the range selection and create a color selection using color. We'll get out of that and we will go over here to this picture of this woman. And we are going to delete the mask and we're going to create a new mask. And we're going to go to range and go to luminance range. So luminance range is simply picking by brightness value. So since we have a simple white background on this, I can click that white background. Now you can see it didn't get it perfect and it's picking some of her face. And what that means is I can come in here and I can slide this. And you'll notice that this luminance range slider is much more advanced looking than we saw in the other options. And so we can control this. First of all, if we see this is the area that's getting selected. If I want to change that, I can slide this around so we're getting just the whites. I can also grab this little tab and drag that out so we're getting more of those areas selected. If I wanted the opposite, the blacks, I could slide it on over to here and get those areas selected. So if I wanted to add, I can click add, I can hit luminance range, and then I could pick this area as well, and we can add. Now you're seeing it's getting way too much of an area. It's not doing a great selection in this image, but that's how you use luminance selection. So we can slide on over to here. We'll see if it does a better job picking this shirt right here. So we'll come in here. We will create a new mask. We're going to do it by luminance range. I'm going to select her shirt. And yeah, that didn't work so good. So let's slide this out. This is the feather that we're getting. And I can slide this back so we don't get her face. So the issue here is this is very similar to her face and it's not working out so great. We have options. I could slide this out so it selects her shirt better. And I can control this feather here. And then what I can do is I could actually hit subtract brush. I probably wouldn't do it this way, but then I could paint it out of the areas that I don't want. So we just got her shirt. This type of selection works really great and more of a graphic design element. You have something that's perfectly white or perfectly black or all red and it's the only area in the whole image with that color. This works great. But if you have gradations, it's not the best selection for this method. It's not always going to give you the best selection. Luminance selection and color selection are two options that I use very rarely. And that's how you use the rest of the selections inside of Adobe Lightroom. So now that you've taken a look at all the different options, make sure that you play around with them, try them out, see which ones you like better. In later videos, after I've taught you how to use the program, I will show you what I use when I use it. So learning any sort of photo editing application is usually a two-step process. First, I'm showing you how to use it. Second, I'm going to show you what I do and what I use, why and when, after I already know how to use the program. So hopefully you have found this video helpful. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below. Don't forget we have a Facebook group, so if you have complicated questions, you can always join that group. It allows you to post videos and photos, which makes it a lot easier for me to answer questions. Don't forget to subscribe and have a wonderful day.